game tomorrow. The Cowboys 9 straight. Washington's won 6 of their last 8. We're running out of good things to say about this Cowboys team. It's just week in and week out. They're so efficient. They're so consistent. It's just it's incredible how we're still talking about this team with a rookie quarterback and running back. Just keep doing it week in and week out.
Yeah, and they keep doing it, I think, on a little bit bigger stage, too, where we think that maybe, this is the time where they may struggle or at least show kind of their youth, at least with Dak. I mean, there's been very brief moments where Dak has maybe struggled a little bit. The bar's been raised so high that when he has those moments, everybody says, oh, okay, well, is this kind of the beginning of the end? And then he kind of rallies from that. We saw it against Philadelphia. What he did at Pittsburgh was amazing. Joe and I were there to watch that. Not an easy place to play, as we talked about. And then last week, there's some that have said, well, yeah, but he really hasn't played a great defense. I disagree with that. I think when you're 9 games in, 10 games into the season, you've played some good teams and you've had to go through a lot. And I think that we could say that about Dak. But last week against the Ravens, that was best defense in football. And I know it didn't start out great, but to do what he was able to do, put up the numbers that he did, and then for them as an offense to be as efficient as they were, it really is remarkable. We were talking to the defensive coordinator yesterday for the Washington Redskins, Joe Barry. He said, in all his years of coaching, he's never, ever seen a rookie come in and play at the level that Dak has played at, and I would agree with that. I think the only one that even comes close in comparison would be Ben Roethlisberger, but I think what Dak has done, certainly surpasses that, and I think you combine that with the fact that he was not viewed as someone who was going to come in and take over as the franchise quarterback, where Roethlisberger was as a 4th-round pick for Dak. It's an amazing story. It's been a lot of fun to follow.
It really is amazing, and we were kicking around this hypothetical earlier this morning. Let's say the Cowboys had pulled off the move to take Paxton Lynch on draft day, or the move to take Connor Cook on draft day.
Right.
Or let's say Kellen Moore hadn't gotten hurt and he was Tony's backup and he had been the quarterback all of this time. Is Dak really that special? Is he as great as he appears to be? Or do you think any rookie quarterback or a guy like Moore who didn't have a lot of experience with this cast around him would have been close to as successful?
Well, I think that's a fair question, and it's a good question. And the answer to that, I think, really is kind of all over the board. And I think if you put Dak, and this isn't just isolated to Dak, but if you put him in a different offense and with different people around him, then the results are going to be different. If you put me in a different offense than the one I had, with North Turner and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin and Jay Novacek and the offensive line, the results for me are different. And the one that I point to often is Steve Young when he was playing for Tampa Bay. And, he was not looked upon at that time as a future Hall of Famer. And then he goes to San Francisco where they have good players, they have good coaching, and it kind of came together for him. And then he goes on and has the career that he has. I think the same could be said for Joe Montana, who was a 3rd-round pick and got with a great offensive coach and ended up having tremendous success. So I do think there's something to be said for where you are and when you're there and the people that you have around you. But to say that you could have just plugged any young quarterback into the Dallas situation and they would have the numbers that Prescott has, I think is misleading, because as much credit as he's gotten, there's always the critics. I mean, in life, there's always the critics, right? So there are those that say, yeah, but what has Dak really done? He's got a great runner. They lead the league in rushing. The offensive line, the best line in football. He's got a great tight end. He's got Des Bryant. He's got a slot receiver nobody can cover. And all of that is true, but you still have to make the throws, and you still got to make good decisions. And we've seen over the years and over the history of this league that not everybody can do that. And so when you throw, what does he have, 17 touchdowns, I believe, and 2 interceptions, and that's really efficient, quality quarterback play. And then when you bring your team from behind late in the game at Heinz Field against the Pittsburgh Steelers, you can throw all those things out the window as far as what's around him and what he has available, you've got to have a little bit of ice water running through your veins to make it through those moments, and he's been able to do that. So it's been a perfect fit. He's been the right guy, and that's been real fortunate for the Cowboys and the Cowboy fans.
It's our weekly visit with the Hall of Famer, the Fox A-teamer, Troy Aikman. We'll be on the call with Joe Buck tomorrow for Cowboys and Redskins. And Kirk Cousins has had an interesting year. We talked about him early in the season, maybe feeling the pressure to produce another big season for a big contract that could be on the horizon. He's an emotional guy. He'll even scream at his own general manager. He's an interesting dude, and sometimes, man, he looks like he is a big-time quarterback, and then he'll go through some stretches where he struggles. What's your view of Mr. Cousins?
Well, I'm a big fan of his. I think he's an awesome guy, really smart. He's someone you root for. He's not just a football player. I think he's got a lot more going on in his life. He's been someone who I really pulled for. I thought a lot of him when he was at Michigan State. He was a fourth-round pick, comes in the same draft as RG3. That's difficult for anybody who's young. When you realize that, hey, they've selected a franchise guy ahead of me, why did they pick me and what's my future look like? But then he's gotten his opportunities and he's persevered. And last year he played exceptionally well. He was as hot a quarterback as there was in football the second half of the season. And you could argue that that's been the case even since midseason last year to where we are to date. The first couple of games got off to a tough start, didn't play at the level. I thought, he is a guy who can tend to put a little bit of pressure on himself, and you're right. I think that when you're a fourth-round pick and you're constantly looking to have that payday and validation, and then he has the season in a contract year, and they didn't really show much confidence in him in terms of offering him a fair market value long-term contract. So he takes the franchise tag. He's playing for a lot of money, granted, but it's a one-year deal. And so I think he's hoping to secure some job security and then some future pay. And after 2 weeks of the season, then he's picked it up, and he's really playing at the level that he was last year. And I think that the conversation that we just had with regards to Prescott, I think is applicable to Kirk Cousins there in Washington. What they do offensively, I think, is as good as anybody in football. I think they're extremely well coached. Of course, why wouldn't they be? They've got some really talented guys on that staff. Bill Callahan, who Cowboys fans are familiar with, is coaching the offensive line. Former head coach Sean McVay is a young guy who's kind of a protege of Jay Gruden and some of the things that they did in San Francisco. And I just think the way that they tied it together with good players and a good offensive line play, and Kirk has benefited from all those things, but he's been really terrific. So, this game tomorrow, the way I look at it going in is both of these offenses, I would anticipate moving the football. I think there'll be a lot of success offensively. I see this being a high-scoring game now. Joe would also remind me that last week before our Minnesota Cardinals game, I said this game's going to be a baseball score before it's over. Two great defenses, and it turned out to be a shootout. So you never know, but I would expect these offenses to be really good tomorrow.
It's always interesting to try to figure out the quick turnaround and how it's going to affect the two clubs who have to play on a Thursday, and you played on Thanksgiving Day every year for your career when you were healthy. And I've always wondered what the turnaround was like for you guys physically and mentally with the home game, and then how much harder is it for a team like Washington that had to play on Sunday night and then turn around and go on the road?
Well, for me, fortunately, I never played on the road on a Thursday game. The Thanksgiving game was the only time there were Thursday games when I was playing, and we felt that we had a huge advantage. First of all, we felt that we had a huge advantage because we then, kind of deemed the weekend as an off week, and it gave us a 10-day rest and kind of to get regrouped before we hit the 4-game stretch following Thanksgiving, and then we also felt that we had an advantage in the game because of the travel that the visitors had to go through. And I've always said, and it's harder to do now because there's Thursday games every week, but I always felt that the Thanksgiving game, that whoever was traveling on Thanksgiving, they should play at home the Sunday before, and whoever was hosting Thanksgiving, and that was then Dallas and Detroit, that those teams should always play on the road the Sunday before to try to balance things out. Well, you bring up a good point for this game tomorrow. Not only were the Cowboys at home, but they were at home on an early game, so they played at 12 o'clock. And then the Redskins, yeah, they were at home, but they were on a Sunday night game. So when the game ended for Dallas, those coaches, as soon as they left the stadium, I promise you, they headed out to the Star and they began their game planning for this Thursday's game. And they were game planning and in the office before the Redskins even kicked off on Sunday night. So it's a huge competitive advantage in preparation, getting ready for this game. And I'm sure the league is aware of those types of things. I know that the schedule makers do really a pretty phenomenal job when you look at it over the years. And when you combine these Thursday night games and trying to balance everything out and make it fair and competitive, I think it's damn near impossible. But this was not lost on Jay Gruden. He's made comments about it, rightfully so. It tilts things pretty heavily in terms of preparation throughout the week. Will it have an impact on this game? Probably not, but it is unsettling for the Redskins for sure.
Well, we're getting the wrap-up sign from Joe. He says we need to get going so we can talk about his book next. So,
well, hey, I'll look forward to seeing you guys this afternoon. It should be a lot of fun, and the listeners out there will be out in Grapevine and from 3 to 5, and look forward to seeing everybody.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. Thanks, Drew.